everyone. I'm Amy Woods, Executive Director of Alumni Relations at Marist and a graduate from the class of 1997. I'd also like to welcome my colleague Donna Feldman from the Alumni Office and Chris Del Giorno from College Advancement. We're very excited to present this webinar to you today with Dr. Lee Miringoff and Dr. Barbara Carvalho from the Marist Poll. Hello, Lee and Barb.
Hey, great to be here.
Hi, Barb.
If you encounter any audio issues, you do have the option to dial in by telephone. We are providing that number and code in the chat box. Due to the number of participants, we have muted all lines except for the hosts and panelists. We're going to reserve the chat option for any technical questions you have or general questions for the Marist staff who are listening in. Please do not send private messages to Lee or Barbara. They most likely will miss them. So instead send them through the Q&A feature to the host. That way Donna and I will see your questions. And we'll do some questions toward the end after Lee and Barbara present. There are several ways you can view this presentation on your screen. If you hover over the top right corner of the video portion of your screen with your mouse, some small icons should appear. The preferred choice for a webinar like this is side-by-side view, as Lee and Barbara will be showing some slides. There will be a brief survey on your screen at the conclusion of the webinar with just a few questions. It should pop up as a new tab in your browser. If you have a minute, it would be extremely helpful for us to hear your feedback. So now I'd like to welcome Chris Del Giorno, Vice President for College Advancement and a graduate of the class of 1988, who will introduce our presenters this evening.
Thank you very much, Amy, and good evening, everyone. We are so pleased to welcome you all to tonight's event featuring two of the nation's leading experts in public opinion research and political polling, Dr. Lee Miringoff and Dr. Barbara Carvalho. And could there possibly be a more timely subject to discuss tonight than the 2020 elections? It's hard to imagine, and it's no surprise that several hundred Marist alumni, parents, and friends have registered to join us for this evening's event from 22 states and one foreign country. I'm truly honored to introduce our presenters this evening. Dr. Lee Miringoff is the founder and director of the Marist College Institute for Public Opinion and an assistant professor of political science. His PhD in political science from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, BA from Clark University. He's a frequent commentator on politics and elections and is often quoted in print and digital media. Lee frequently appears on television and radio, sharing his expertise on public opinion, politics, and polling. A native of Poughkeepsie, New York, Lee is also a diehard fan of both the Yankees and the New York Football Giants. Dr. Barbara Carvalho is the director of the Marist College Poll. She received her PhD in political science from Fordham University and her bachelor's degree in psychology from Marist College. Barbara has written numerous articles on election, politics, and public. Frequently comments on current events for print and electronic media. Barbara is also an equestrian, and though she might not admit it, a very talented vocalist. Together, Lee and Barbara direct the NBC News Marist Poll of key electoral battleground states and the national NPR PBS NewsHour Marist Poll. Lee, a great distinction to Marist College, and when the Marist, it so often is, among the most accurate and respected polling organizations in America. It's a significant point of pride for everyone associated with college. Thank you so much for your willingness to share your considerable expertise and insights with us this evening. With that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you a lot. Good night. I just wanted to know, Chris, with you said 22 states are represented. Do you know how many electoral votes that would represent? So I want to know. That matters.
Now we'll really turn it over to you.
So, Barb, thank you very much, Amy and Donna and Chris. Barbara's going to talk a little bit about some of the changes at the Marist Poll, and some of you who are veterans of the poll to get you brought up to date, and for others to let you know what's going on. I'm going to talk a little about presidential stuff. And then Barb's going to soon thereafter be talking about some of the Senate races, and then we will be happy to do questions shortly thereafter. I'm not sure, Barb, why I'm seeing that chart right now.
Well, there's actually no reason. There's no reason to be seeing that particular chart.
Okay.
But I was just trying to move. I'm going to stop sharing for a second and see if I can try that again. Because hi everybody, I'm really glad to be here, and I'm so glad you guys are joining us tonight. I will try to get the PowerPoint up. I am presumably sharing it. But it's going
to.
Sorry.
It's like you're about 3 slides down, Barb. So if you just scroll up, you'll be there.
No, it's okay. The issue is more that okay, there, now I've got it. I actually had something covering the toolbar.
Oh, okay.
So it was a little technical malfunction, but yes, thank you, Amy, Donna, and Chris. For coordinating and sponsoring this today. And thank you everyone for joining us. There are so many familiar names and we really look forward to hearing from each of you. You know how much we just love to talk politics, and we're very happy that you can join us this evening. Before we head into the gory details of 2020, though, as Lee mentioned, I'd like to take a few minutes to update you about some of the goings on at Camp Marist, and specifically at the Marist Poll. As many of you know, we've been doing lots and lots of polling, public polling this year with our media partners. We've been doing national polling with PBS NewsHour and NPR, and then the competitive state polls with our partner NBC News. So they have all kept us very, very busy. As you can see, we have also done some polling with some other media partners as well. Those tend to be on specific topics or issues. So for instance, sports with HBO Real Sports and whatnot. So we do get around. The other thing we do is we've been doing some polling just because the 2020 election is not exciting and time consuming enough, but we do some polling with some private clients. One of which was a summer project where we surveyed the opinions of parents of public school children. We did that for school districts to help them plan for the reopening this fall. So lots of different topics, lots of different things. Some of you, have also heard that our beloved campus polling center in the Hancock Center has been somewhat retooled since, I guess, March for social distancing. So we seamlessly at that point transitioned to an entirely remote call center. We're still using all the technology that we had in the phone center, but we've added a couple of other things too. Microsoft Teams, so that coaches and interviewers can communicate with each other throughout the night. We've got lots of Zoom rooms for people to pop into during the evening if they have questions or need to be briefed on a particular issue or changes that are going on. And of course, we use Marist's learning management system, iLearn, for training and providing the interviewers a lot of resources. And I think over the summer, we had about 200 students working with us during the summertime doing our polling. And it was really, really great to connect with the students. Again, many of them, had not, weren't able to have the summer jobs they thought they might have ahead of them or the other activities as well. So it was a really great way to remain connected, even if we couldn't be in the same room.
Yeah, Barb, Barb, if I could just add one point on that. One of the nice things about being remote is we're not limited in the number of individual students who can be interviewing at any one time. For those of you who polled with us, there was only so many seats in the room. This is now, we actually can do lots and lots more people interviewing than we
And
could have.
it's so cool. And our coaches, and for some of you, I think you may have been called supervisors in the past, but we now call the supervisors in the phone room coaches, and they were just tremendous. We were so impressed with them. They really stepped up and learned all of the software and different technology so that we could all communicate and literally stay face to face, which is totally cool. Another feature that we have instituted in the last year or so is something called the Marist Poll Academy, and this is a kind of a bunch of online explainers about polling. It's fun, it's engaging. We've been getting quite a bit of traction on it, particularly as the campaign has heated up, not only from students and folks on campus, but throughout the country and actually globally. There doesn't seem to be any kind of rhyme or reason to the educational institutions that people come from, but it seems to be part of a number of different courses. But it's free, it's engaging, and it's something that that you can take a look at too, because you can kind of find out the nuts and bolts of polling. And if you have any questions about polling, they're pretty fun courses to go through. The other thing is, after Election Day, we're going to be also providing the assessments that we use for our students on this site as well. So if you want to see how you did and want a little bit of a challenge, check us out again as well after Election Day. And then, of course, another new program which we're really proud of. So much changed, in March, and it's really been 8 months, now, and a lot of the students had opportunities in other cities and other countries for either internships or to study abroad. And so because they had to postpone some of those, we thought we would offer a different program this semester for a select group of students called College to Career. And it's an internship with us. We got quite a large number of applications, so it was really competitive. And we chose 10 students. Call our newsfeed side, so they're very much involved in our releases, our graphic designs, some of the videos that we've been doing of late, and all the social media. So they're getting quite an education from former NBC reporter Jada Dapper, who now works with us as our Director of Innovation, and former producer from also NBC, Mary Griffith, who many of you know. So they're quite an education. Another 5 are on the data side, and they're actually doing survey projects, data analysis, day-to-day as the polling, both private projects and public polls have continued through the fall semester. And what you're looking at right now is some of the newsfeed students who work on our podcast, Poll Hub. And Lee and I do that along with Jada Dapper, and we get visited often by Mary Griffith, as well as other guests to talk about polling and some of the other things that are going on in polling life around the country and around the world.
And that's a weekly broadcast that we do, or not broadcast anymore, but it's a weekly program, and we're up to 167 of those. So feel free to jump in sometime.
Yeah, we'd love to have you. And if you have questions, we're always happy. You can always contact us on social media, and we love to take questions during the podcast as well. But it really seems like such a long time ago that Lee and I took 2 busloads of students up to New Hampshire for the primary in February. As I said, I think I counted 8 months, although, we'll say probably many times tonight that we're not really good with numbers, and we like to just be within the error margin. But I know some of you who are joining us tonight too have been to New Hampshire in previous years, and this time was no less exciting. It was kind of the last normal thing we did before we all changed our routine and locked down, particularly in New York for COVID. But we've come a long way in this time, and a lot has changed in the campaign as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Lee to get down and dirty about what's going on in the campaign. And we're just, he's going to make a few remarks about the presidential campaign and where it is. I'll jump in again at the end for a little bit on the Senate, but we want to get to your questions and what's on your mind.
Good, thanks, Barb. And we forgot to also mention we do lots of speakers used to come up to campus. What Barb is looking at. What do you say, Barb? If you don't
blow your own horn, there's no music.
So this is a rating that 538 does, which is a source for a lot of political information. And there are 420 polling organizations in the country, 6 of whom get an A+ rating from them, of which we proudly are one of those 6. So we don't know where we'll be after this November, but at least that's where we are right now.
But it is a testament to all the good work that the students do and how conscientious they are, and not just the students now, but the students in the past, because this is a reputation that has been built over decades.
Yeah. So one of the things. Yeah, one of the things that makes also being remote has actually improved is our ability to bring speakers to the classroom virtually. So they don't have to schlep up from Washington or New York or elsewhere. So we've used that also as an opportunity to do lots of different things with them and bring up some people who we might not otherwise be able to. Let me talk a little bit about the presidential race, and then Barb's going to talk about the Senate. So right now, our polls and other polls show that the nation is really in the throes of a loss of confidence in our leaders and in our institutions, whether that is corporate leaders or the media or Congress or the integrity of the voting process, people running for office, President Trump, whatever. There is that loss of confidence, but President Trump is really not the cause of all this loss of confidence, although in the tone he has set, I think he has sped up the process of Americans who have lost faith with some of these fabrics and aspects of our democracy. Right now, as 2020 is taking place, the election, it's a time in some ways of national self-doubt about whether we can get a hold of a lot of problems. The plate is full, from obviously COVID-19 to the economy, to healthcare, to education, to the infrastructure, you name it, we have issues. And I just wanted to comment on 2 stress points that are really underlying why we're so polarized as a country and what's really pulling our fabric further apart. So with a little luck, we'll see the first graph. And as he pauses to see the first graph.
The pressure is on.
Yeah, let me just.
At least it came back to the same
There
place.
you go. Okay, this is. I'm going to say this. I have about 3 or 4 charts, and this is.
You want to go back? You want to go somewhere else?
No, this is perfect.
Oh, okay.
Okay. No. I was going to say that this. I'm going to say that each one is my favorite. Okay, so what this talks about. This is one source of tension that we have in our society, and this has to do with the changing demography of our population. And if you look back, and this is each presidential election year as a data point, if you look back all the way on the left, you'll see 1976, and that was when Jimmy Carter was elected. 90% of the electorate was white at that point, and 10% were people of color. If you go to 1992, when when Bill Clinton was elected, the numbers had changed, still overwhelmingly white, 87 to 13 people of color. If you go to 2008, when Barack Obama was elected, the number of people who are not white as part of our electorate was at 26, which now doubled what it was when Bill Clinton was elected in 1992, and the white figures had continued their descent. And then last time when Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton, the national electorate was 69-31. So you can just see this incredible change that has gone on demographically along racial lines in the nation. And this has led to one source of tension between Republicans and Democrats. Ron Brownstein of CNN has called one aspect of this, the one side of the ledger, the politics of restoration. And basically, if this is the Republican coalition, these are white voters, they're older voters, they're blue collar, tend to be non-metropolitan, tend to have a high value on religious institutions, tend to not as often be college educated. It's basically the Donald Trump constituency. And that is up against what is called the politics of transformation. So rather than trying to restore the Make America Great Again approach, the Democrats, who are more tend to be people of color, younger, college educated, suburban women, more secular, that group has really in battle as a politics of transformation, trying to change things in a certain direction, as opposed to the GOP coalition. During the Trump years, this has widened the trenches. In other words, the polarization has widened during the last 4 years. It didn't start. You can trace it back to certainly the 1990s. And if you want to go way back, you can go back to the 1960s, but certainly in the Clinton-Gingrich era of the 90s, we saw the current era of polarization start to set in. And right now, it's on hyperdrive. The strategy of Donald Trump, as you look at this graph and it'll make sense, is that he is trying to squeeze a greater margin out of a shrinking group. His best group are white, non-college, okay? And 8 years ago, they were 48% of the electorate. In 2016, they were 46%, and this time we expect they'll be 43%. So his base vote is actually shrinking. You hear about him having all about his base and it's intact. It is intact, it's just getting less. And in fact, if you take the electorate that we're likely to find in 2020 and put it on the vote, overlay it with the vote of 2016, Hillary Clinton carries the states that elected Donald Trump, including Florida. So it's Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan, with the demography that it currently is, would have gone to Clinton, not Trump. So he's trying to get this wider margin of a shrinking group, and he's doing it at the expense, and this is where the polarization comes in, of causing greater resistance out of the growing groups in the population. So we're seeing a politics of replacement, for lack of a better phrase. This will be the first election since that will have that people born after 1981 will be larger than the amount of people, share of the population born before 1964. In other words, the younger people from 1981 now are equal and offsetting the group that I'm in, the folks that are born before 1964. In my case, it would even be the folks who were born before 1954, but that's a different matter. And so this is going to be an ongoing trend. Second stress. So one stress has to do with population. The second stress has to do with how this population is distributed around the country. So if you could go to the next chart, Barb, on the red, red, blue, blue, we can look at that. Okay, so what we're looking at momentarily, no, we're not looking at that.
No, I know. I'm getting there.
I know.
I'm getting there. Don't be
There we
patient.
go. And this is also my favorite chart. Okay.
I know you actually like all of these
I
charts.
like this stuff. It's very visual and helps me understand what's going on. Okay, so what this is now is the red and the blue represent locations, counties in America where the presidential election in that county was decided by 20 points or more. What that means, I think in English, is that where there were landslides in a county, it would now get a red dot or a blue dot, depending on whether it was a red, Republican, or blue. So if you go to 1992, you'll see, I think we have a dog joining
I was looking for my mute button, and Amy or Donna, if, while Lee's speaking, you want to mute me, please.
Okay, but you got to go back and graph. Barb, you moved me ahead on the graph, which I don't want to do.
Sorry.
Okay, so if you look at 1992, okay, there's not a lot of dots on there. There's some red, there's some blue. Then circle, I don't know whether that's clockwise or counterclockwise. Go to the right, and you see 96, 2000, 2004, then hook back down below, 2008, 2012, and then below 1992, in this case, is 2016. And you can see that what's been going on in America is we've been having red states, counties getting redder, and blue getting bluer, and that the country, again, showing a greater polarization, which means there's a lot more landslide counties, which means there's a lot less by region, by county, by state that's competitive. It means that a lot is already set in stone even before we begin a given campaign. And this doesn't distribute randomly. What we're seeing, and here's the rub on all this, is that the blue states tend to be states with larger population, and the red states tend to be the states, Republican, with smaller population. And this creates the imbalance in the Electoral College and in the Senate. I'm going to talk now about the Electoral College, and Barb's going to talk about the imbalance in the Senate in about 4 or 5 minutes. In the Electoral College is obviously determined not by population. Well, everybody gets 2 senators, and then you get population to determine it. But because of that, you end up, and I'll go to that chart in a second, you end up with states like California, as opposed to Wyoming, where each electoral vote, they have 55 in California, represents 700,000 people. But in a place like Wyoming, each electoral vote represents fewer than 200,000 people. And if you have more red states than blue states, you end up with a situation like we had last time, where the Democratic candidate can carry the popular vote but lose the Electoral College. This has only happened before Bill Clinton 3 times in our nation's history, and it's happened 2 in the last 5 elections, 2000 and last time. And so we see that this kind of imbalance has really extended the life of the Republican dominance, the Republican governance, both in the White House, where they can win with a majority only in 2004 in the last 32 years, and they can also then dominate the Senate, which then can create the 6 of the 9 Supreme Court judges, assuming the next one gets appointed in the Senate. Okay, so having said all that, the graph you're now looking at is the 2020 battleground states. And you don't have to listen to me to find out where the battlegrounds are. All you have to do is watch the candidates, where they're going, and where they're spending ads. So you have 10 states last time that were decided by 5% or less. 4 of them were carried by Hillary Clinton: New Hampshire, 1 district in Maine, Maine divides it by 2, Minnesota, and Nevada. Those are the 4. And if you've noticed, there's been trips by Donald Trump into Minnesota and Nevada lately, because he knows that if he loses the industrial Midwest, he's going to have to find a state somewhere else. So he's poking around looking to pick up a state. The other 6 states were states that Donald Trump carried by under 5%. And the 3 that are being hotly contested, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, which all happen to be states that Barack Obama carried, were the states that made Donald Trump president last time. The other 3 are Florida, North Carolina, and Arizona. Arizona is interesting because the Democrats haven't carried Arizona since the Eisenhower years, and yet right now are probably narrow favorites to do just that. So the last thing I want to talk about is my other favorite chart, which is my interactive map. So we're going to have a little fun, I hope, while we wait for the chart to appear, hopefully.
Okay, give me a second.
We're my patient, Barb.
I have to now, I now have to switch over to the.
All right. Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, so this is
Okay,
easy
and
now.
I think I have this set up to be 2016.
This is 2016. This is except it says Joe Biden on the bottom, and it should say, I mean, if we were correct, it would say.
Oh, sure. No, yeah,
Yeah.
that I couldn't change, but just
That's fine.
electorally,
Yeah, this is what the
it
map.
looked like 4 years ago.
Yeah, the blue is what Hillary Clinton carried, the 20 states she carried, and the brownish whatever is what Donald Trump carried, 306 electoral votes. So let's play with this a little bit, and you'll see how it does with the Electoral College. So we start with 2016, and let us flip the 3 industrial Midwestern states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So let's make those blue. Okay, and that just elected Joe Biden. Okay, so if Joe Biden carries every state that Hillary Clinton carried and flips Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, he then has enough electoral votes to win.
And President Trump won those incredibly narrowly. I know you were looking at percentage.
Total of 77,000 votes in those 3 states. Now, let's say Biden comes up short in Wisconsin, which is possible. So we'll give that back to Trump. It's nice to play God with this stuff. We'll just flip Wisconsin. And then let's say Arizona goes.
You don't actually have to do much else.
Yeah, no, anything else. Well, let's say Arizona then goes to Biden, and he's back over the top. However, and here's where we get what we call the dreaded tie. If you take Arizona, flip it back, Barb.
Okay. Oh no.
Take Arizona back. Okay. And so what I've got on this map is nothing all that unreasonable. I have everything that happened in 2016, and I'm saying, with the exception that Joe Biden carries Pennsylvania and Michigan, and in Maine and Nebraska, you can carry a part of the state. So last time Hillary Clinton took half of Maine and did not win the seat in Omaha, Nebraska, which is also, you can get 1 electoral vote. But go back to right where we are, and all you need to do is say Joe Biden now carries Maine. So flip Maine, and then we have what's called the dreaded tie. Okay, 269, 269. And if you want to have a miserable country, you can come out, wait 2 or 3 weeks until past election day, when all the votes are counted, and it ends up 269, 269. And this is not a psychotic map. All it says is everything that happened in 2016 plus Pennsylvania, Michigan, and I tossed in 1 vote in Maine, which right now all looks like things that Biden could easily flip. Right now, the likelihood is he's going to flip more, but this could happen. So I was going to talk a little bit about where we are in terms of some of the strategy issues, but I did want to stop there, Barb, and have you go to the Senate, and then we can take on some other things maybe when we're doing questions.
Okay. All right, let me just, I'm just going to just quickly bring up just 1 slide because I want to get to your questions. And so I'm just going to go back to this little PowerPoint that we had here and just take a look at some of the Senate seats. And these are the top 10 most likely to flip, although technically, if you look at this, I think I'm not sure that they would necessarily all flip. I'm looking at Georgia too, and there's actually 11 contests here. But the Senate is not immune from some of these geopolitical issues that Lee's been talking about at the presidential level. Originally, the idea of having 2 senators was that each state would be able to, each state would be able to balance the power of the most populated states. And that way, you could both balance the majority, which would be in the House of Representatives, with the minority view and minority opinion, which would be in the Senate. So that smaller states could have more of a say or a balance, just as much of a say as larger states. But as Lee has been pointing out, there's now this incredible imbalance, and it's been created today largely between the large states that have now clustered urban populations and then the smaller rural states. And you can think again about California and Wyoming. They have equal Senate representation. So even the majority of the current Senate, if we take a look at that, the majority in the current Senate represents about 18% of the population. And they were elected with a subset of those voters in those states. So if this trend were to continue to 2040, and I think with the whole change to COVID, and people moving away from urban centers and away from, clustered housing, it becomes a little less likely. But if we were to take this trend and move it forward, you would have half the population living in 42 states, and therefore they would have 84 senators. And then you'd have the other half of the population would live in only 8 states with 16 senators. So you can really take that imbalance, to a very significant extreme without a lot happening. But let me just talk a little bit about what's happening with the current Senate. So we have 53 senators right now who are Republican, 47 senators who are Democrat. And this time up, we're actually looking at the class of 2014. So it's those senators who won during Obama's second term midterm election, where there was a very strong GOP showing in the electorate and also in the winners. So this time we actually have 23 Republican seats that are up, and only 14 Democratic seats that are being contested. So out of those 37 seats, now we take a look at these 11 Senate seats, and these are the ones to really watch this time. For the Democrats, in order for them to have the majority in the Senate, and please try to follow along on this, because they would need, if Biden wins, they would need to pick up 3 seats to then have the majority. Or if Biden wins, but they lose Alabama, which I'm going to just get to in a sec, or if Trump wins and then they hold Alabama, which is highly unlikely. So if Trump wins, technically the Democrats are going to need to pick up 5 seats. And how would they go about doing that? I just want to point out the 2 kind of vulnerabilities for the Democrats. I mentioned Alabama. That's incumbent Doug Jones. This is actually a special election in Alabama. That was the seat that was vacated by Jeff Sessions when Trump appointed him as Attorney General. And so he squeaked through. Alabama, that is not known for sending a lot of Democrats either to the Congress or to the Senate, or having Democrats win statewide races. He was running against Roy Moore. For those of you who follow these things endlessly, he had a few little problems with some, alleged, sexual assault of teenage girls. And so right at the end of the campaign, and Doug Jones squeaked through by some of the narrowest of margins. He is now considerably trailing his Republican challenger. So the Democrats are very unlikely to keep that seat. The other seat that's really closely contested for the Democrats is Michigan. That's where Gary Peters is being challenged by John James. He's a Black businessman. He had run against the other sitting senator in Michigan, Debbie Stabenow, in 2018, and lost in that blue wave, which was Trump's midterm election. It's a close race. If Biden has the strength that it appears that he does have in Michigan this time around, Peters is likely to be brought over the finish line with Biden's coattails. But there's a very, very narrow margin for that as well. And then the rest of these, are seats where the Republicans have incumbents. There are some, strong Democratic challengers. Arizona, I'm sure we've all heard about the McSally race. Again, she was appointed after John McCain died, and so she was appointed to that seat. And Mark Kelly is challenging her, the retired astronaut and husband of Gabby Gifford. So that is one that the Democrats are pretty confident that they will pick up. Also, Colorado, Cory Gardner's not particularly popular there. The former governor, John Hickenlooper, is very popular, and that also looks like a seat that will be picked up. And after that, it gets a little tougher. North Carolina, Maine are certainly competitive races. Joni Ernst against Teresa, I think Greenfield in Iowa is also very competitive in the polls right now. Joni Ernst, who has been elected because of her brashness, is probably taking a little bit of a cost now because of her repeating of some of the COVID conspiracy theories. But that one still is close, particularly if the president does win Iowa. He may also bring her over the finish line. In Montana, Steve Bullock is challenging the incumbent. He is the governor there and has been very popular, although, if Montanans can also, keep both of them in their current position by keeping the Republican incumbent.
And also the likelihood is President Trump carries Montana by a big margin. So it's the opposite effect of what would be happening in Michigan, where Biden carries the Democratic candidate over. Trump may be carrying the Republican over in that case.
Georgia is the one state that actually has both of their senators up this time around. And they have the craziest of elections, basically, particularly in the one that is the special election, which is Kelly Loeffler seat. There's a ton of candidates in there. There's the possibility, or probability, I should say, that will go to a runoff, because in order for it not, someone has to get 50% plus one. So that's likely to go to a runoff. If the Senate weighs in the balance, that runoff doesn't happen until January 5th. Hopefully we get on to more optimistic topics questions rather than an election that's going to last until eternity. But in that race, it may be two Republicans running against each other, at which point then the seat is moot. But there is also a Democrat candidate who may end up in the runoff as well there in Georgia. And I just wanted to just quickly point out a couple of the weirdo races. One is South Carolina, where nobody expected that to be a close contest. But then the challenger there is certainly running a very strong race. Jamie Harrison has gotten traction with painting Lindsey Graham as just someone who is too tied to Washington and no longer knows what's going on at home in South Carolina. And then the other one, which the Democrats have put in a lot of dollars, is the Mitch McConnell race in in Kentucky, Amy McGrath there, they were hoping to pick up that seat. I think that's a really, really tall order. They've put an enormous amount of money there. I think the most of any Senate race. And then, so we'll have to see. I'm not sure that it's worth that. Democrat Espy in Mississippi, although the president's going to carry Mississippi by an enormous amount, but he is close in the latest polls and challenging Cindy Hyde-Smith. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
No, I think we should get to questions, and just you might want to put up on the screen, Barb, if people want to reach and contact to us, there's different ways of getting to us, and then we can just take questions. Maybe we will, maybe we won't.
Okay.
Notice the whining dog got silenced. I did not go down and strangle the dog. I merely gave him a ample amount of dog kibble to keep him going. But Barb was not strangling. It sounded like a person. It wasn't. It was actually a whining dog.
Yeah,
so
that's little Freddie.
Yeah.
I keep picking up the same thing, and I'm not quite sure why I'm doing
okay,
that.
but we can take the questions while you fiddle.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Yeah, you got stuff, Amy or Donna? Whoops.
Donna has questions for you. She'll mute first.
Okay.
So I do know that you guys have a hard stop time because you do have another event that you need to get.
And what time is that?
So we're going to ask you a couple of questions. And you were going to put your
We
contact
started a little late, so is that okay?
I think maybe around 7:35 would be okay. So
Okay.
we have about 10 minutes.
Okay, we'll talk quick.
Okay. So the first question, and I'm sure that this is on a lot of folks' mind, what impact will Trump contracting COVID have on his relative appeal to voters?
Okay, I'll take that one, Barb, because I know the answer. That's the worst thing. Forget about the health implications. It's the worst thing for Donald Trump because it's his weakest issue, and it's one that everybody is plugged into. So on the issues that you compare in the polls, who's better able to handle different issues? The one that Biden runs up the biggest total on is on COVID. And now to have the president and the White House and Steve Miller, who's his main assistant also, just now I saw, has also now tested positive. There's about a dozen of his main advisors, his campaign manager. I mean, it's really a shambles right now in terms of COVID breaking loose. And the president, in typical fashion, I would say, talked about the care, how he was able to tackle it. There's a lot of people around the country, 200,000 families and 7 million cases, who feel that, a lot of them feel that they did not get the care the president got. And we obviously understand he's the president, but the lack of empathy is a real problem. So bottom line, it's the worst issue for him at the worst time.
Although I would just also like to add that I think that it's not really going to change the opinions of his supporters. Top of mind for them is the Supreme Court, the economy. They're much less likely to know anybody, probably except the president who has had COVID. The danger for the president is that he has lost support among independents, which in some of these states he trounced Hillary Clinton and now is trailing Biden badly, and particularly among, I say suburban women, but at this point it's actually kind of gender neutral. It's really both men and women in the suburbs and exurbs around the urban areas.
Okay.
All right, I have one here. In the likely event President Trump fills the Supreme Court vacancy, what role will a conservative court play in the instance that Biden wins and Trump refuses to step down?
Well, this is all part of the suppression concerns. I mean, one would have to think that the Supreme Court would have to eventually see evidence of fraud in order to vote that somehow the election was not valid. This is probably, if the race is not as close as it was in 2000 when the court voted 5-4 to pick Bush over Gore, some of the numbers are suggesting right now that Biden has opened up a lead. If he ends up winning by a fairly substantial amount, both in the popular vote and the Electoral College, I think it's going to be very hard for the president to make his case. But that doesn't mean he won't. And it doesn't mean they may not go, they may go to the Supreme Court, and then all bets are off, really. I mean, one doesn't know.
I think also just for, for watching election night, and I think you may have mentioned this in passing earlier, Lee, but pay attention to North Carolina and Florida on election night, and probably Texas. Those are the 3 states that are going to have the quickest counts.
Yeah.
And so if the president wins those 3 states, then all bets are off. Then we've got a
long election month. If Joe Biden wins Florida, the spin on TV will be that's indicative of a Biden landslide. So, right. And we probably will know Florida election night, and North Carolina, and maybe Texas, and a few others.
They have always had a fast count.
Yeah.
The northeastern states will have a much tougher time.
Okay.
Okay, I have another question here for you guys. Last time around, many in the general public thought the polls were wrong, and pollsters across the country received a lot of flack. Did you change anything in your strategy or data analysis this year coming into the election season?
Yeah, the polls, unfortunately, were not wrong in 2016, despite the opinion that they were, because of the perception that Hillary Clinton was going to win was overwhelming. That was the case that was being advanced by these forecasters who have models. They're doing it right now again, where if you see that Joe Biden has an 82% chance of winning, those aren't polls. Those are people doing models of the electorate based on a lot of past history and the like. The polls were actually quite accurate, particularly the ones that were taken after the Comey letter. The Marist Poll, ding, 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 happened to be the closest nationally, with Hillary getting the popular vote by 2 points. And the 3 states we did poll in the end, we all were right about. There was the perception that the polls blew it. That's because people thought Hillary was going to win, but they thought that because people at the Huffington Post and YouGov and 538 and a lot of other places were saying that there was a high probability that she would win. They're saying the same thing now about Joe Biden. So we'll have to see.
Although we did really well in 2016, as Lee mentioned, both our national and our last state polls. I think to look at any polling prior to the last week or so, and particularly the Comey letter, there was so much going on in the last week of the campaign. But that said, one of the things we did find was we changed our methodology actually in 2018 to make things more productive. So there's actually a study on our website for those of you who really like geeky kind of sampling things. But one of the things that we found is this issue of geography. So when you hear in the news or you hear the debate about, well, if a poll doesn't weight by education, don't even look at it. Well, no, it's not about education. It's actually about geography. And it's real important that the polling methodology includes those areas which are Trump's strengths, and those are rural areas. And the way pollsters draw samples, we can have a bias, particularly if we're trying to make them more productive, which means we're adding phone numbers that we know are real numbers, as opposed to dialing just any kind of random number, which takes time and money. So what we've done is we've made sure, first of all, that we are pretty close to pure random digit dialing, not adding in those numbers to be more productive. Because they tend to be more urban and they tend to, even in rural areas, cluster around more populated areas. So that's actually, I know it's not a really easy kind of thing to talk about, but it's really geography. So the thing to walk away with, it's geography. It's not shy Trump voters. Trump voters are not shy. There's no social desirability about telling pollsters, that you're voting for a candidate when your family and friends are likely doing the same. So it's about how we're polling, and hopefully, we'll be able to track it accurately again this time.
As of today, what do the numbers look like? Who are the polls favoring to win?
Well, the latest national polls, which were taken after the president's coming down with COVID, NBC Wall Street Journal.
No, prior to him. I don't think they were in the field. They were in the field after he came down with COVID, or just after the debate?
After the debate. I'm not sure about that, Barb. I'm actually not sure. I think you're right. In any case, the latest polls, but it was certainly post-debate, showed that one showed Biden ahead by 12 and the other by 14, which is probably a little exaggerated, but that's the kind of lead that would carry a lot of other things with them. That's the lead the Republicans fear the most and the Democrats look for as a blue landslide. But folks, every day is a whole new day in American politics, and we'd be more than foolish to even think that anything other than impeachment would be all we'd be talking about, because that's what we were told 8 months ago.
You don't even have to go back that far. I mean, 10 days ago, the New York Times came out with a story about Trump's taxes, and everybody thought, oh my God, this is going to be this incredible story. And taxes, what taxes? I mean, think about all that's occurred since that story in terms of the debate, in terms of the president's health. So we expect the last 3 weeks to be very interesting.
Yeah.
Although I think it's 4 weeks from tonight. I think it's actually 4 weeks from tonight.
Yeah, exactly a month, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I keep rushing it.
What else you got?
Okay, I think we have time for one more question.
Okay, can I suggest also that if people have questions that they are not able to have us answer because of time, or other questions that just kind of like come in the middle of the night when you should be thinking about the Yankees and how great they're doing, but then you think about this, you can email, right, Barb? They can just email us, right?
Yeah, or on social media. I'm at the Marist Poll.
Okay.
We can include all of your contact information.
Here, if you want to take a photo, here's some stuff. Here's some ways to get a hold of us. But keep talking. Tell us what the question is. So while we're doing this, we can answer.
Okay. So one last question that we have time for. How do you find the people that you poll?
Find them. They are randomly selected. If you mean how we pick them, we have what's called a sampling frame. So think of that as a big bucket of phone numbers for cell phones. And we randomly select all the phone numbers if we're doing from the country. And we have a big bucket of landline phone numbers, and we do the same. We randomly spin them. When I was talking about that, adding productivity, we would add listed sample. In other words, we'd add a proportion of phone numbers that we knew were households. It would still be randomly selected, but what we find is when we do that, it just has that kind of urban clustered bias. So they are just, they're randomly selected. The numbers are spun so that they're made up. It's time consuming, it's expensive. That's why you don't see a lot of folks doing it that way anymore, because it's just become cost prohibitive. But I think as an educational institution, and I think I don't want to speak for Lee, but I know that I'm always, saying that I am a science advocate. It is a scientific process that you can detail and you can watch, and so that's really the best way of of selecting people. Now, there's a lot of also other polls that use what's called registered base sampling. And that takes a little bit more work on the back end, which means you need to balance it. You don't always get the people, a good cross section of everyone, but you do get a cross section of those people who have registered to vote and who have given the Board of Elections contact information like a phone number. And that's where it breaks down, because only between 60 and 70% in most states have a phone number associated with it. And that's why, we choose to, or at least we see it as a little less representative than doing the extra effort of interviewing people randomly.
Yeah, I would like to just say one 30-second closing, because we're talking to a lot of you are alums of the college, and I want you to know that in the newspapers you hear about a lot of colleges and campuses having lots of trouble because of COVID. I want you to know that because of what the administration and the faculty and the staff, but most significantly the students at the college, you cannot walk around campus without seeing a student wearing a mask. And we have had, I start every class commending the students. It's all in their court. We've changed the calendar to start a little earlier, end a little earlier. Tomorrow is halfway through the semester for being on campus. And although it's not going to make a big story, right now, the Marist students are carrying the water on this one. And I just want you to know that that your campus, the legacy you guys left is really commended by the current student body. It's just really a great thing, and we are open for business, even if sometimes remote like this. But that's all. Thank you guys for joining. If you guys want, we can do one thing after the election when you can say, we can do another thing like this. Why is everything you said in October didn't happen? And so we can take, we're good. We're flexible. We can go that way if you want to do another.
Thank you very, very much for joining us.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Lee and Barb. We appreciate you taking out the time of your busy schedule. And thanks everyone for joining us this evening and for keeping the Marist Alumni Association in your life. A full recording of this presentation will be available the next few days on our website and on our Marist Alumni YouTube channel. Please continue to check the Marist Alumni website for upcoming virtual events, as well as our Tuesday event e-newsletters. Thanks again, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of the afternoon or evening, wherever your time zone may be.